Several people are being held hostage. An unknown man takes people's lives one by one. Then he takes their skin and looks at the tattoos. Meanwhile, in the Russian Christian church, the nuns gather at the dinner table. Sister Yulia eats soup that looks like blood. Later that night, Julia has a nightmare. She wakes up and feels severe pain in her stomach. She feels nauseous and has increasing abdominal pain. Julia approaches the statue of Saint Mary and notices blood on her hands. There are tears coming from the statue, and Julia smiles when she sees the tears. Father Thomas Fox arrives in St. Petersburg. The high priest asks him to go to the temple to see Julia. He says that this is an unprecedented case. Fox says he's tired of doing exorcisms. He says he doesn't believe in it and won't do it anymore. He's going to quit being a priest because his girlfriend is pregnant. The Holy Father cannot have a wife and children, so he just wants to be a good Christian. But the bishop says that Sister Julia is also pregnant. She says it was a virgin birth, and she refuses to talk to anyone except Father Fox. Fox promises to think about it. He goes outside and meets his girlfriend. In the evening, Laura studies the personal file of her sister Yulia. The file says that Yulia had a difficult childhood and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Laura tells Fox that he must help this woman. This is what every Christian should do. Laura tells him that she will go to Estonia for work, and then they will meet and go to Canada together to start a new life. Father Fox hits the road. A few days later, he arrives at the monastery. The cardinal meets him. He is very happy to meet him because Father Fox often mentioned the cardinal in his dissertation. Cardinal admits to being a fan of Father Fox's work. They go to the statue of Saint Mary, and Father Fox says that she doesn't cry. It's just condensation. He immediately expresses his skepticism about the case. The cardinal introduces Fox to another priest, Father Saul. This is the same man from the beginning of the film. Father Fox finally decides to talk to Julia. She greets him using English. Father Fox asks, "Where did you learn English?" Julia says that she has never studied English. Julia talks about why she went to the monastery. She wanted to find a purpose in life. But as time passed, she realized that only death awaited her here. But God gave her a different fate. He gave her children. Father Fox asks why she asked him to come. Julia says that the children are talking to her, and they told her about him. Only he can prevent something terrible from happening. The nuns take Julia away without allowing them to finish. The cardinal shows Father Fox several images. He says it's an ancient language. The manuscripts contain prophecy. A virgin will give birth to twin boys. One of them will be good, and the other will be the embodiment of evil. The Antichrist will try to kill his brother. For this, he will use a church minister. Thomas doesn't believe this prophecy is real, but the cardinal is sure that Julia is not crazy. He thinks that God is talking to her. During their discussion, Father Saul comes to Julia's room. He injects Julia with sleeping pills and takes her to another room. Father Fox goes to his room but notices Julia. A woman goes outside without clothes. She goes to the lake and goes into the water. Thomas runs after her and dives underwater to save Julia, but he is unable to find her. He emerges from under the water and finds himself in the center of the cross. It was a nightmare. Thomas wakes up in his bed. An old nun lies next to him. Meanwhile, Father Saul convinces the cardinal that Julia should have an abortion. Thomas takes the old woman to her room. On the way, he overhears a conversation between Father Paul and the cardinal. He waits until the cardinal is alone and asks him why he agreed to deprive Julia of her children. The cardinal says that the Antichrist should not be born with the Messiah now. If they are born, the world will end. Father Fox says that this is wrong. They have no right to take the lives of children. The cardinal realizes that he was wrong and decides to help Julia escape. The three of them try to escape. Father Saul stabs Thomas, but they still manage to leave the building. They get into the car and try to break down the gate. Saul approaches the car, but there is no one in it. The fugitives escaped through another exit. They get into another car and drive away. Soon they arrive at the train station, and they buy 3 tickets to Kiev, but they board a train that goes to Tallinn, Estonia. The conductor asks for tickets, but the cardinal says that they accidentally bought the wrong tickets. She allows them to stay on the train and pay for their tickets at the end of the journey. At night, Thomas becomes ill due to his injury. Julia begins to give birth. The cardinal delivers the baby. One of the children does not scream, but he is alive. The second child also turns out to be healthy. In the morning, a male guide comes to them. He asks to see their passports, but notices the babies. He looks into the eyes of one of them and suddenly his gaze changes. He turns around and starts hitting his face against the window, but it was a nightmare again. They arrive in Estonia. Meanwhile, Father Saul is waiting for them in Kiev. Laura meets Thomas and his friends. The news reports that there will soon be a solar eclipse, but no one attaches any importance to this. Laura takes everyone to her grandfather's house. On the way, she turns on the radio, and the news reports that the moon has left its orbit, which has caused powerful geomagnetic tremors underground. They arrive at an old house, which is located far outside the city. Laura's grandfather was a hunter and artist. Laura says that in the last years of his life, grandfather painted very strange pictures. Laura takes Julia to her room and shows her the cradle for her children. Later, Laura receives a call on her phone. She is informed that people at the plant have begun to fall ill with an unknown disease. Laura asks for tests to get to the bottom of the problem. Meanwhile, Julia offers her help to Thomas. She treats his wound, and at that moment, Laura enters the room. Thomas walks her to the car. He says that they will no longer be able to return to St. Petersburg because they are in danger, and Thomas promises that they will soon leave for Canada. Laura leaves, and Thomas loses consciousness. In the morning, Thomas wakes up in his bed. He goes to the kitchen, and Julia serves him a delicious breakfast. She admits that she is very happy to be here. She feels great and calm. After breakfast, Thomas goes for a walk. He notices a deer caught in a net. Thomas frees the animal. The cardinal says that this deer was supposed to be their dinner. He says that people have begun to forget that in order to survive, they have to become violent. There are many traps in this forest. The cardinal wants to find them all and neutralize them so that in the future, children can run around this forest. In the evening, Julia examines Thomas's wound and sees that the wound has completely healed. Thomas looks at Julia differently than before. The woman says that the children want them to become a family. At dinner, the cardinal shows the drawings and again talks about the prophecy. He says that the prophecy is already coming true. The pictures depict a chronology of events that have already occurred and that will occur in the future. He says that in the future, Thomas will die as a priest, but will be resurrected as the Son of God. He says the prophecy doesn't mean they have no choice. They have a choice, but right now, two brothers are fighting each other, good fighting evil. Meanwhile, Father Saul comes to Laura's house and kills the maid. At night, Thomas and Julia have the same dream, in which they confess their love to each other while in church. In the morning, Julia talks to Thomas and says that they have been chosen. They are destined to become a family. Laura arrives unexpectedly. She's covered in blood, but it's not her blood. She says that people in the city began to fall ill with an unknown disease. The workers at the factory think that Laura and her factory are to blame. She asks Thomas to leave for Canada as soon as possible. Laura goes into the shower and comes to her senses a little. She wants to hold the baby in her arms, but the child looks at Laura and shows the future. Laura starts to cry. Thomas and Laura leave home together and come to Laura's house.
Strange. Thought you were supposed to come.
Laura changes clothes and goes to the bedroom. She looks out the window and notices someone in the forest. Thomas comes and says that there is no one outside. Meanwhile, the cardinal begins to hear a voice.
Kill the child, give you all the flesh. Kill the child and save many.
The evil baby tries to take over the man's mind, but he resists. The cardinal sees an unfamiliar man on the street. The cardinal follows him into the forest. The stranger keeps repeating the same phrase. The cardinal says that he will not follow Satan's orders. The stranger comes closer to him. The cardinal tries to free his leg, but the wolves are close. Angry Man offers a deal. He says that he will save the cardinal if he kills the child, but the cardinal refuses the offer. The wolves attack him. Thomas and Laura arrive at the factory. Laura is trying to understand the causes of infection in the city. She is sure that the plant is not the source of infection. The workers see Laura and begin to insult her. They call her guilty. Laura tries to calm them down, but one of the workers shoots her. Before Laura dies, she thinks only about her child. Thomas begins to pray for his beloved. Laura is dying. Thomas realizes that the purpose of his life has left him forever. He decides to return to Julia. They go together to look for Cardinal and find his body. Thomas drives off the wolves and takes the body with him. Father Saul finds their house and sees Thomas and Julia burning the Cardinal's body. Father Saul enters the house and points a gun at the child, but the baby begins to speak in the voice of an adult man. He asks to kill his brother and will generously thank him for this. Saul gives in to temptation and points the gun at another child, but Julia will attack from behind. Thomas attacks the priest, but also loses the fight. At the last moment, he thrusts the cross into Father Saul's face. After some time, Julia tells Thomas that they must leave here. She thinks that now they will always be persecuted. Thomas does not understand why Julia behaves this way. The woman goes upstairs and shows the paintings of the old man who lived here. The paintings depict everything that happened to Julia and Thomas in recent days. Thomas starts laughing. He realizes that all his life he tried to expose such cases and did not believe in the prophecy. But the prophecy is real.
What have I helped you do?
Thomas starts to go crazy. Evil tries to penetrate his soul, but Thomas resists. He sees Laura, who tells him that he must kill the good child and then kill himself. In the morning, Thomas goes to complete the mission. Thomas breaks down the door, but Julia manages to escape. She runs out onto the road and sees a police car. She asks to help her, but the child distracts the police with a loud sound. Thomas kills both men and moves on. Julia runs to the cliff. She finds herself at a dead end. Thomas asks her to give away only one child. The evil child inspired Thomas that this is the only way to save humanity. Julia tries to convince Thomas, but he cannot resist the power of the devil. He pushes Julia and takes the kind child in his arms. He's about to throw him off the cliff, but at the last moment, he changes his mind. Julia takes the gun and shoots him. At this moment, the solar eclipse begins. Julia asks God to save Thomas's soul, and when the solar eclipse ends, a kind child resurrects Thomas. Julia and Thomas return to the house. At the end, she says that now the two children will decide their own fate. When they grow up, good and evil will fight again. And this is where the film ends. Write your opinion about it in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell to be the first to watch new videos.